All right, good day, everyone. My name is Onyema Udeze, and today I'll be talking about BIM as an enabler for smart and intelligent buildings. So first of all, I have a background in architecture, but I also have experience as a BIM modeler, and I create online courses for LinkedIn Learning. So I have a couple of online courses on the LinkedIn Learning platform. So basically in this session, I'll be making a case for how BIM can enable us to create more smart and intelligent buildings. So I'll start by asking a question. Based on the transformations we've seen in our life generally in the past few years, how advanced do you think humanity can get in the next few decades? And to answer that question, I would say that in the next few decades or in the next few years, we'll begin to experience a convergence of different technologies that are powered by artificial intelligence and machine learning, and we'll realize that there will be a little demarcation between our physical reality, our virtual, our mixed or augmented reality, or whatever you call it. And all this will be made possible by technology. And today, we have seen an explosion of, remote work and digital nomads, and all these things are made possible because today we can work remotely. Thanks to COVID and a lot of things, things have changed. And because of that, in our spaces that we spend most of our time, we begin to actually demand more of these technologies that are making our lives very efficient. So because today you can even realize that a space can quickly transform from a bedroom to perhaps a living room or even an office on a given day. So all this will be made possible by the technologies that we'll begin to experience in our lives in the coming years. And as human beings, we spend up to 90% of our lives in buildings. And because of that, we begin to actually demand for more user-centric spaces that are tailored to our real-time needs. So basically there will be an increased need for smart and intelligent and responsive buildings. So that's basically me painting a future like the reality that will perhaps become a reality in the next few years. But where are we today as human beings? Right? So the reality is that most buildings today, at the point when they are being delivered, are still somehow behind the real-time needs of the end users. Right, so most buildings are not at par with the digital advancements that have become an integral part of our day-to-day living. So we basically design buildings for different purposes that are still behind the needs of human beings. As all of us as human beings. So to bridge that gap, we realize that the IT and the electronics industry constantly provide us with solutions and technology. All the smart gadgets we are using today are basically trying to bridge that gap between our needs as human beings in our spaces that we spend most of our lives and what the industry is providing humans. Right, so it's no surprise that the global IoT market as of last year is about $400 billion US, and it's projected that by 2026 it will actually grow to about $600 billion US. That's just the IoT market. Right, of course, I'm not trying to say that as an industry we've not tried to make buildings smart. We've made several attempts to make our buildings smart, but the reality today is still that buildings are still behind our needs as human beings. So there have been several attempts, but then there's still that shortage or that gap. So which now leads me to ask, you might be wondering, what exactly is a smart building? When I say that buildings are not smart enough to meet our needs, what exactly is a smart building? So before I answer that question, I will trace it back to when the conversation about smart building technology actually began. So the reality is that the conversation started as far back as around 1980, when some developers and some building owners in the United States were looking for ways to increase the value of their properties. So they came up with what they call the shared tenant system, whereby they would procure different telecom solutions to infuse into their buildings to increase the value of the properties. But then they quickly realized that shared tenant system, there are a lot of complexity in the telecom industry, and they were not able to manage all those complications. But the reality is that ever since then, the effort to make buildings smart has always relied on the users or maybe the developers, or not necessarily the designers, because as an industry, we are not thinking of the end user experience most of the time when we are designing buildings. Right, so you see that the effort to make buildings smart largely comes from the end users, the building owners, or maybe the developers. Right, so having explained that, I would say that a smart building is basically a building that is tailored to the real-time needs of the end users. So buildings that can actually adapt to your needs in real time. So I'll try to, of course, it's not just all about technology. There are some business advantages to this, right? So the reality is that if you're able to deliver a building that is truly smart, it's also a good business for the developers and the building owners. And that's because from what we've seen in other industries, when you have an integrated solution, it's easier to manage and operate, right? And also, even for the end users, the customers, because it's tailored to their uses, they will have a higher perceived value for those facilities. And then also, for the contractors, it's also a good business because when you're able to integrate all the technology solutions in a building, it's easier to manage such a project. I mean, even during construction and all that, it's also good business. And of course, all the stakeholders and every other person that is involved in the design and delivery of buildings is also good business. So if smart building is such an interesting concept, why then has the building industry not embraced it over the years, right? So it's a very interesting question. So there are so many factors to that, but then I'll just give 3 reasons why it's like that. And the first reason is that the building industry is a very complex industry. You can't compare the building industry with, let's say, the automobile industry or the phone manufacturing industry, for example. Because on a typical project, you have so many stakeholders. You have the client team, you have the design team, you have the contracting team, suppliers team, and so many teams come together. And even at that, you have different types of buildings, different building typologies, different locations, different context, and even standards. There are so many complexities in our industry that makes it quite hard to standardize a lot of the solutions that we put out, unlike the telecom or the automobile industry. So that's one of the reasons. And then also you have even the way we assemble the stakeholders, the contract methods, they're also very diverse. I mean, you can talk about the design and build. You have the design, build, you have the owner build, you have the contract management. There are so many contract methods in the industry. So we don't have a uniform way to even deliver the facilities, which also makes it a problem. So that's the second reason why it's so hard. And then also, even the design process itself. The way we design building is also a challenge. And that's because even though as designers in our industry, we have embraced 3D modeling, BIM, and all those stuff, but today, as we've seen by other speakers, there are a lot of tools in the industry, and so many of these tools can't even talk to each other in real time, and it becomes a problem. So because of that, a lot of these integrations in our industry, and those integrations makes it hard to deliver a smart solution, unlike other industries. I mean, if you take a company like Toyota or Tesla, for example, you see that they have an enclosed system that can interact in real time, but that's unlike our industry. There are a lot of these integrations, and without that, it becomes very hard to deliver smart solutions to the industry. So just to recap the shortcomings, you have the complexities of the building industry, you have the contract methods, and then you have the design approach. So these are some of the challenges that we face as an industry that makes it hard to deliver really smart solutions. So of course, this is now where BIM begins to come in, because BIM is actually a process that enables multiple stakeholders to communicate in real time, perhaps through a cloud-based solution. I mean, today we've talked about ACC, talked about a lot of solutions that actually collaborate in real time through the cloud. So this is where BIM begins to come in. But the reality is that as much as BIM has gained a lot of attraction in the past few years, it's still a process that enables us to deliver better solutions. So oftentimes you see that there's a missing component, which is actually system design. And why system design? Because in a typical facility, I mean, today we live in a very complex world. There are a lot of technology systems that go into a facility. So basically, it takes system design to integrate these diverse technology systems, both physically and logically, from the design stage of built assets. So that is actually where, by the time you begin to infuse, system design with building information modeling, right from the design stage, you see that as an industry, we can deliver even better facilities. So on a typical project, you find out that the technology consultants or specialists tend to work in parallel with the mainstream designers. For example, the architects and the engineers. In a project, you might have the subcontractor or the technology specialists, and some of them come into play maybe during construction or after construction. So if it's possible to actually harmonize all these diverse stakeholders, I mean, you can only imagine what is actually attainable in our industry. So all this actually have inspired some of the courses that I've been creating. I mean, currently on the LinkedIn Learning platform, I have about 4 online courses, and one of them is actually focused on system design and how to use BIM automation softwares like Revit to actually create more smart buildings. So I have a course on the platform that is actually Revit for system design and smart buildings. I mean, why Revit? Revit is a very robust software because it allows multiple disciplines to collaborate in real time. I mean, as architects, as engineers, there's different stakeholders that can use Revit, but then this course focuses on how to use Revit for system design. So the aim is to ease the system designers into a collaborative design workflow with other professionals in the industry. And the course is actually based on the ANSI Joint Standard 710. So basically, the course provides you with a Revit template that already has all the standards infused into it, and you can find it on the LinkedIn Learning Library. And then, of course, it's almost hard for you to talk about smart buildings without talking about sustainable or green buildings as well. So because of that, recently I also released, just about 2 weeks ago, I released another course that is also titled BIM for Sustainable Design and Green Buildings. And the focus is to also showcase how you can use tools like Revit, tools like Autodesk Formit, Insights, and all those tools to actually design and deliver green buildings, all this from the design stage. So, of course, you can check my courses on the LinkedIn Learning Library. You can just search for my name. My name is Onyema Udeze. You can search either on the LinkedIn Learning Library or on the LinkedIn platform, and you can find those courses. And then also, I have an online academy that's basically we are still building, where you can also find some other things I've been working on in the past couple of years. So thank you very much. That is all I have to say. If you have any question, feel free to reach out to me. Also, I have my card here, so if you need that, you can see the barcode to the content. Thank you.